What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders, people I really admire for many reasons. And I'm really excited to introduce you to today's guest, Andy Hussong. And if you don't know him, you should. If you don't know his work, you should. EndorsedInfluence.com. You know, I was just on your site and reading through some of the guidelines you have and of the partner persuasion path. And I think in my mind, everything in life is a relationship. You know, it comes down to relationship, whether it's personal, whether it's business, whether it's health. And so I consider you one of the masters of relationships. So one of the people I look at and look to as a giver. And so if is Inspired Insider, so I'll give Andy an official introduction. Other episodes you can check out. You know, Andy, I love to hear the challenge stories, some of the low points. The Pipe Drive founder, one of the co-founders, Urmas, I interviewed him like 6 years ago, and he talked about that in the same year he had brain surgery. He got married and he moved from Estonia to the United States, which was a tough year for him. And so he talked about that. And at the time they had 10,000 customers, and now they have over 100,000 customers. So it's amazing to see what they've done. If this episode is brought to you by, and all the work behind the scenes is funded by Rise 25, which I co-founded with John Corcoran, and we help businesses launch and run their podcasts. So it makes sure they get to talk to their best relationships and give to their best relationships through a medium like podcasting. So if you have questions about it, go to rise25.com, check out more. And there's more of an inspiration behind it, which is a legacy piece, Andy, which is like, I consider when I have you on, we're leaving a legacy for you and for me. And so my grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor, he's kind of the motivation behind us. If you go to the About page on Inspired Insider, there's an interview with the Holocaust Foundation and my grandfather. And that's kind of the inspiration behind why I think podcasting is so important. So rise25.com. But today's guest, and shout out to like biggest givers, who I consider in the universe to me, Ian Garlick, Lee Richter, Larry Benet, Michael Roderick, and today Andy Hussong, highly respected authority on the topics of online joint ventures, creating endorsed influence for his students and agency clients since 2005. You know, a pioneer. I mean, I don't know when the internet came about, but he's been doing it for a long time. He's been in the trenches, connecting, collaborating with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, marketers, resulting in millions of dollars in profits for his clients, high converting webinars, launches, affiliate opportunities. He's the co-founder of Webinarcom Con with Ron Douglas, who I've had on. I think I had Ron on, Andy, maybe, I don't even know, like 7 years ago or something. Should have him back on, and Onyx Singal, right? And you know, Andy's proven systems help experts, authors, speakers, coaches, all of them own influence by teaming up with other like-minded experts. And you can go to EndorsedInfluence.com. Andy, thanks for being with me.
Right on, man. Jeremy, I appreciate you having me on here. And you know, first of all, thanks for the kind words. I would have to throw that back at you. You're one of those really kind individuals too. I've met over, through my years in the online marketing space, going to live events. And I remember us sitting down for probably a couple of hours at TNC a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And, having a good conversation and all that. So it's great to be on.
I should have a criteria, Andy. Only Cubs fans are allowed on the podcast.
That's right.
So.
I should have worn my Cubs. I got to have a Cubs hat somewhere. I've got a Cubs coffee mug over here, if that counts.
If when we're out of like social distancing and back to games, we'll go to Wrigley Field. But talk about, how did Webinarcom Con come to fruition?
Well, that actually, for me, it started about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago, because I started experimenting by putting people together in virtual groups to collaborate about their JV deals with webinars and helping them come together, people who had webinars come together, mastermind, and so on. And then ongoing, I saw where Onyx had a guest on where he was had somebody at his Learn Center presenting. I think it was Ty Cohen. That's who it was. Ty Cohen had his Kindle Cash Flow event there. And I reached out to him asking, initially it was about finding out what it would take to get his Learn Center to do a live event based around what I was already doing. And at the same time, he responded to me and said, hey, Ron Douglas is also interested in this event for the same kind of reason. You guys should chat. And so Ron and I got together, talked about it.
Did you know Ron before then?
Oh, yeah.
You did?
Ron and I have been friends for probably 7-8 years online, just meeting at live events such as like I did with you, and done some JV deals together and so on. And so we agreed to partner, and we thought we would talk to Anik to find out what it would take. And then after some back and forth, Anik brought up the idea, and we had considered it too. Hey, why don't the three of us partner on this? And so we decided, let's go for it. And we decided to book the dates of March 6th through the 8th of this year, which we're very fortunate we didn't book for after that, because everything
shut down after that.
Yeah.
You just made it. Wow.
Yeah. For all I know, we're pretty sure we were the last live marketing event. I think there was another one evening event that went on like that next week, but I think that was about it. So anyway, that's how it got started, and we're still partnering together on some other things related to the Webinarcom brand.
So what does that look like now? So it goes from live event, but people can still get online learning and distance learning, right?
You mean with what we're doing?
Yeah, with what you're doing, yeah.
Well, actually, we are going to be doing something soon. I'm not supposed to say anything yet, but
right.
We will be releasing.
Well, since this is live, don't say anything.
Yeah.
If this was if it was recorded for later, I'd be like, don't worry, we'll release it like in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, but we're about to announce something else that we're releasing that I think will be a big hit as well, and it will allow a lot more people to take part in that, because the original Webinarcon event was held to 100 people, and it was a tight fit. And we originally only planned on having, I think it was 35 people. I think it was 35 people we planned on, and then we bumped it to 50. And the demand was there, and we had the room. And Anik actually sent a video to Ron and myself. It's funny, we have this 3-way Facebook Messenger chat we've had going since like late November or something like that, maybe December. And having this conversation, he sent us a video showing the Learn Center, where he's like, hey, man, hey guys, I rearranged the tables. I think we have room for some more. And because there were just a lot of people that wanted to go. And so we were able to get 100 people in there. And it, like I said, it's a little bit of a tight fit, but I think it was just right.
What was good, Andy, that came out of that? What was maybe some of the content or some of the things that people were talking about that was powerful for people? What was the feedback?
Well, I can tell you one thing we did. We put people together it's kind of like speed dating. We put them together one-on-one and timed it, and had them moving. We had 2 different rooms that we had that going on with rows of tables, and people just move. And so that was a big hit. We did that on day 1. And we would have liked to have gotten that in a couple more times over the weekend, but we had so many speakers set to present that we just had to keep it rolling. And but some of the other things, content-wise, I mean, we just had people. Well, Anik, for one, he shared, how he won a launch. I think it was a $12 million launch or something. He was number 1 on that earlier this year. So he talked about everything he did, all the sophisticated systems he had in place. Had just a lot of different high-level speakers, but I think the biggest benefit to it all, it was that after day 1, we had so many people. And by the way, I had no idea we were going to be talking about Webinarcon on this. And so just for anyone listening, this wasn't a setup to sell you guys on what we did. But to answer your question, after day 1, we were being told that this was, a lot of them said it was their favorite event they've been to, not because of the content so much, even though a lot of them said they love the content. It was because of the purpose that we had, which was to bring people together, just like you would at a regular live event, where people go to, a lot of them go to make new connections, to hopefully do some JV deals and such. this was set up for that, to be able to come together with your webinar. Not everyone had a webinar, but I would say 80% of them did. And others were service providers related to webinars. And so what they were excited about was the fact that they already were doing deals the first day just from hanging out, just being in the room, being introduced in the speed deal thing that we did, as well as just during lunch and so on. And we had a contest to see who'd do the most deals and things like that. It just made it a lot of fun, and people were just excited about that. So that was the best thing for me.
So it was kind of a combination, it sounds like, Andy, of bringing what converts in a launch in a webinar to how do you form these joint venture partnerships as well. And that's your, like, the ultimate superpower comes in. Was there, before we go to that, your superpower, was there anything that Anik mentioned, like out of the $12 million launch, that sticks out as something, this piece, don't miss this piece in your launch?
To be honest with you, I can't remember specific details about it. And as one of the co-founders, I was going in the room.
I figured
to make sure things were going on.
Well, if anyone is watching this and you were there, please put in the chat what big thing you got out of that Anik talk. That'd be cool. So when approaching partners, joint venture partners, okay, you have what's called this partner persuasion path, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, really the first half of that is more about, getting prepared and how to approach them and everything. But
yes,
but
sharpening the saw.
What's that?
Sharpening the saw.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've seen so many times where somebody has a webinar, not so much a launch. Usually when someone has a launch, they're pretty prepared with what the details are before they start reaching out to people. But because I've been focusing on webinars exclusively for the last 5+ years, I think it is, what I found is a lot of guys who have new webinars are solid and everything. They want to go to try to get partners, and they don't really have their ducks in a row yet. And so the first thing I always advise people to do is prepare, and that's to prepare their the details of their JV opportunity, getting down certain information. And it doesn't mean you have to have a real fancy JV page or anything like that. Just getting it down in a document. It could be a Google document. I like to use Evernote documents just because they look a little bit better. They look like a web page a lot of times. And just get the basic details down, and then prepare your contact list, the people that you really want to reach out to. And we don't have time for this during this call, obviously, but I have a whole process of being able to pinpoint your low-hanging fruit contacts who you may not already be thinking about. Just one idea there is a lot of people have been told, hey, when you release your course about, YouTube traffic or whatever it is, let me know. I'll endorse it to my people, or I'll promote it, right? And people like that, people you met at live events, people who you've promoted in the past as an affiliate yourself. And just brainstorm all these people, make a list of who these people are. And then after that, prepare the approach that you send to them. And it's very simple, keeping it short and sweet, making it all about them on the front end, just to get a response to see if there's any interest in collaborating at all. And it's not even about, hey, will you promote this for me? It's about, hey, I've got this idea, but I don't even know if you're endorsing anything. And that's important too. I always use the word endorse, not promote. And that's something else we can talk about if you want. But
go ahead. Yeah.
But I'll get to that. But that's pretty much it. You make it all about the other person. And they're not dumb. They know that if you're reaching out to them out of the blue, especially if they haven't heard from you in a while, if
what do you want
each other,
right?
Yeah, that they probably got something they're wanting to do for themselves, and so you make it something about them, totally authentically, where you're making it about are you even looking to endorse things to your audience, to the people that are trusting you? And if so, say, well, I've got an idea that might be a fit, and I'll leave it up to you to decide. And that's when you get in that conversation, and then just see what happens. And of course, there's more to it than all that, but that's kind of my short answer.
I mean, people can check out endorsedinfluence.com, and you have, if you check it out, you can actually download a free PDF which is his partner persuasion path. So if you want the full details, I mean, we don't have time right now to go through all of them. You can check that out on his website, and we'll hit on some different topics. But you mentioned endorse, not promote. How did you come to that verbiage?
Yeah. Well, I think it probably started because I really can't remember when or how I came up with using the term endorsed traffic is really what I started using. And it was back when I was working with Todd Brown as his JV director, and he and I are still good friends. And one of my big influences in this industry, by the way. And we both talked, and I think, okay, so that does explain how I came up with it, because he's a big proponent on coming up with special terminology for the thing that you do, and in a way that is different, but makes a lot of sense to your target market. And so what I came up with regarding endorsed traffic is that it's important to understand that when you're looking for someone to promote or to endorse your webinar, your product launch, or evergreen affiliate offer to their audience, it's important to understand that those people on the other end trust that partner that you would be working with. And if that partner does endorse you to them, that's what this is. It's an endorsement. They're fully endorsing you to their audience. And so that's why you want to make it all about the potential partner you're reaching out to, because if you reach out to them from an angle of, hey, what is it your people want? What is it they respond to the most? And I just, would like to find out if what I have is something that might be a fit for them. And that's another thing too. Never go to them and say, hey, I've got something that's a perfect fit for your list, because, and that's another topic we can get into.
Then they're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about two big things on that topic, which you take me there, right? Mistakes, big mistakes people make when reaching out, and also the metrics. Because you say, you got to be prepared. So let's start with the metrics for a second. What metrics should people know? And I'm not saying they're leading with the metrics, right? Because at a minimum, you just want to know, are you even promoting anything to start the conversation? But when you further along the line, you need to be prepared. So what metrics should people know? Like, what do you look for? Someone, hey, Andy, I have a webinar. You're like, okay, boom, I already like you. I trust you. We're going to endorse this thing, probably, maybe. What are the metrics? What do you look for? Sure.
Well, first of all, even before the metrics, the topic and what the topic is about, is it something that in and of itself is going to be interesting to the audience. Like in my case, I match people up, with offers. And so when I see an offer, a lot of times I can tell if it's going to be a home run in the webinar JV circuit or whatever, right? Just by the topic alone. But then as far as metrics go, one myth is that you have to have cold traffic conversions before you take a webinar, for instance, out into the JV space. It's just not true. It just isn't. I mean, I've seen it happen so many times where people have not spent a dime on paid ads before doing that. I'm not saying that it's not ideal to do that. I'm just saying it's not.
Yeah, obviously it may be ideal if you can do it, but
Yep. And so now, with that said, if someone comes to me and says, hey, I've been running this on cold traffic for the last 6 months, and it's just been doing great, whatever those numbers are, in terms of EPCs and so on. I really haven't personally got into EPCs and ROA, what is that? ROAS, return on ad spend, and for paid ads and all that. I really don't even fully understand all that. All I understand is on the webinar side is that if it's hot and people are buying it and you've got a high conversion rate in terms of commissions, like per attendee, like dollars per attendee, dollars per registrant, things like that you can share with potential partners, then that's kind of what you look at. And I guess just, $100 per attendee in actual earned commissions, not just gross, is a pretty cool benchmark that if you've hit that, people take notice of that. But then, of course, also, if you can let people know you've got a low refund rate, things like that. I mean, it's pretty simple. It really comes down to how hot the topic is, if it's a fit for the audience, if it's been converting internally or with other partners, and so on.
What's another myth?
Another myth is that you have to recip. I hate that term. Okay.
People,
so many times over the years when I've had conversations with people who are really just starting out getting JV partners. Maybe they've got a webinar that's been going well internally and they've just really put it off. I find that a lot of times people put it off because they're scared. They're scared of getting asked the question, will you recip for me? Will you do a reciprocal promo?
Oh, got it.
Will you promote for me? And it's sad because what's true is that if your opportunity is good enough, if it's hot and a good fit for other people's audiences, there are people out there. There are JV partners who will promote you without you having to promote them back in return. Right. And it really just starts with getting one partner who believes in you, which goes back to what I said earlier about, your low-hanging fruit. If you can just get one or two partners who believe in you enough to endorse you to their audience, then you just take the results of that webinar and hopefully a JV testimonial or two from that partner, and leverage that to reach out to other people to see if they'd be a fit.
What are some mistakes people make when reaching out?
Well, just reaching out and saying, hey, I've got this webinar or I've got this offer. Will you promote it? Hey, is this something that this would be a perfect fit for your list? Like we already said, reaching out, making it all about yourself. Right. And I'm not saying that you have to reach out and warm them up for a while before you ever bring something up, because everyone's different. I think if someone you're reaching out to, just wants to get to the point, there's nothing wrong with, hey, how's it going? Haven't chatted in a while. Hope everything's going well. Just wanted to let you know, I understand you've been endorsing different webinars lately. I just wondered if you'd be open to checking out the one that I just released. It's about X, Y, and Z. Not giving a link. Don't give a JV page link yet. Don't start throwing out a bunch of stats. I mean, I think it's okay to say it's converted really well, or maybe you throw in a number, but keep it very short and sweet. And
it's kind of like a first date, right? It's like, you're not like, hey, do you want kids? Like how many, I mean, maybe you do, maybe you have a connection, but you don't want to like jump the gun too far in advance with right. Some of this, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I say you should always take a 2 to 3 step approach when you do reach out to people. Make that first approach. And my favorite way of reaching out is via Facebook Messenger. These days, it seems like everyone's on Facebook. And when I do it from one of those little tabs at the bottom, like everyone uses probably on their laptop. And I try to keep it to 2 short little sentences, or maybe 3, 2 little paragraphs or something like that, really short and sweet, that just, gets their interest, lets them know I'm thinking about them and I have an idea to run by them if they're open to it. Or if it's somebody that I've done a lot of deals with, a lot of times I'll just kind of cut right to the chase, but I still do it respectfully and just to get them engaged in a conversation and see where that leads.
So one of my favorite people also, Andy, is Caleb Odowd. And you've done work with Caleb. Talk about how you both connected and then what you ended up doing together.
Well, Caleb was introduced to me about 4 years ago, maybe, and started having a conversation with him about a webinar he had at the time. And when I found out that he was one of Gary Halbert's original proteges, I think his protege, he lived with him for 2 years, along with his business partner, Sam Markowitz, right?
Yep, I know both of them, yeah.
Yep. And they've done millions over the years in various industries. And so, again, it's kind of like back in the day when I started, not to name drop or anything, but I was John Reese's affiliate manager back in the day, for anyone watching this who remembers him, in the internet marketing space. When I first met him and found out what he had accomplished before he was even teaching this stuff, that made me realize I needed to pay attention to him and get to know him better. And that's the same thing with Caleb. With Caleb and those guys, very highly ethical business owners, people in general, and then the offers that they create are winners. And so, that's how I met him, and we just decided, I started being his JV director for a webinar, and then for another webinar after that. And I think I've done it done that with him for about
So
4 years.
tell people what that means, JV director, because you
Okay.
also have an agency side of your business,
Yep.
and maybe just give people a brief background on how that works.
Sure. Now, okay, so you have, I think I need to preface it by saying there's a lot of confusion, and it depends on who you ask.
Right.
You have JV brokers, and then you have affiliate managers, you have JV managers, and so on. And it's important to understand that a JV broker, for instance, is someone who typically, will connect two people together for a promo, and then they'll get a percentage of that by making the connection, and hopefully helping them, get it on the calendar and help facilitate the whole campaign, which is what I do when I broker deals, because I also do that. But then you have an affiliate manager who, an affiliate manager could be the same as a JV manager. I call it, partner director, JV director, whatever. It's just a positioning thing, really. Mm-hmm. But an affiliate manager or JV director, whatever you want to call it, is somebody who isn't just recruiting affiliates and connecting them and then getting a cut for the deals that he or she puts together. He's actually managing or directing the entire campaign from front to back. The guy in the middleman who's or woman who's facilitating the deal, making sure both sides have what they need. And I'll tell you this, man, JV directors, a lot of people don't understand all the work that goes on behind the scenes.
That sounds like a terrible job. It sounds, not in a negative way. It just means it's a lot of work. It seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, it can be at times.
Do you want to be the JV broker? I'll just connect them. I'll step away. Not as that easy, because you spend decades building relationships and building trust. So It's not like easy, but that in addition to the JV director, sign me up just for the JV broker. Right.
Yeah. Now, the JV director side, the good thing is that a lot of times compensation is better. And you get basically a cut of everybody, all the deals that come through, because you're helping manage everything, whether you recruited them or not. Sometimes it just depends on who the client is that you're working with.
So this with Caleb, you were directing everything in addition to making introductions.
Right. Yeah. And I tell you what I was going to say about it being a tough gig. Sometimes the biggest challenge is when you have two personalities and two different ways of doing things. The client and the partner or whatever, and both sides like to do business a certain way, obviously. And sometimes they just mesh and they get along great, and both sides are cooperative. And then other times this guy's bashing this guy all the way through the campaign.
Really?
Or vice versa.
Like behind the scenes.
Yeah. And you've got to be the one to kind of juggle that.
What would be an example of a bashing? You have to name names, of course, but what did people conflict about? What was
Well, I think, okay, so we were talking before we started recording about stories, and I won't say names, but I remember it was probably back in 2012 or 13. Yeah, it was quite a while ago when I put together a deal, and both sides, and we can talk about what I do to rectify this now just through experience, but here in just a few minutes. But I remember making the introduction and being the one to facilitate the whole thing all the way through. And this guy, I'm getting his email swipes, sending him to this guy and this guy to his, and making sure everyone's got their links and so on. But neither one of them, they hadn't met, they hadn't had a conversation at all. Everything was through me. And I just had a feeling something was going to go haywire. Well, what ended up happening was they promoted each other because the other one agreed to promote for them, that recip thing. All they cared about was that they had someone on the calendar that would also reciprocate for them. And so when they got them on the calendar, one guy promoted 1 week, one guy promoted the other. This guy who was being promoted this week, the other guy didn't push very hard. He's pushing just enough to get people on the webinar. I don't know
to get credit for doing it.
Yeah, just to say that you did it right. Well, this guy's upset because this guy's hardly sending any traffic, right? And so the next week, same thing happens. That dude didn't send much traffic to him, and then this guy's complaining, and they were like upset with one another. And I tried to tell both parties early on that, hey, you guys should really get on a call together. Let me get on there. Oh, no, I don't have time for that. You handle it. And so I remember that fizzled out big time. I think I made $200 on that out of all that time, which is a strikeout, really.
Oh yeah. So what would you do today to rectify it?
Today, what I always encourage my clients to do, especially my JV management, JV director clients, is to do what I call a 15-minute brainstorm call. And the way that works, it's like magic, really, if you think about it, because right after the webinar deal gets booked, whether it's a single deal or a cross promotion, once it gets on the calendar, next thing I say is, hey, now why don't we go ahead and schedule a time for you guys to jump on a quick 15-minute call to discuss the positioning of the offer, make sure we're all on the same page, and answer any questions. And you get some pushback sometimes, because people are very busy, but for the most part, they're willing
15
to.
minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes, knowing that it's probably going to be 30 minutes or so, right? Sometimes it's gone as far as an hour. And here's the magic. The reason I really get them on there is because when they get on there, a lot of times all they do is they find out they got a commonality. Like you and I are big Cub fans. They find out, they start building rapport. They find out what commonality they have, and then they're like, okay, tell me more about what this webinar is about, and what can I do to really push across a lot of sales. And it starts creating buzz during that call to a point a lot of times where by the time they get off the call, it's like I'm 100% all in on pushing for this promotion. And so that's when they really go really well. And if you don't mind me adding to this, when we were talking about stories before we got on here,
yeah.
There was a time I mentioned Todd Brown's name already. I had introduced him to two different people. One was Ryan Levesque, who, the founder of Ask.
I love Ryan. Yeah.
Right. And then I also got Todd and Ryan Lee on a call together, which I think they already knew each other. But in both instances, when they got on the call, as the middleman, I just muted myself and let them talk until they had a question for me or whatever, or if I needed to jump in. And all it was is both sides just giving each other love about loving what the other person was doing online. And then they jumped into the JV conversation, and those promos went off without a hitch. They were awesome. And so that's, just an example of what can happen when you take the time to do that versus just letting the JV guy or JV gal handle all the details and try to get by with doing it without talking to anybody. So
Andy, yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's huge in your years experience. Now back to the Caleb Odowd. I know I interrupted you just to clarify the JV director thing, but so you're JV directing, Caleb. What are some of the components you make sure are there? Talk about the launch a little bit.
Yeah. So with him right now, he's about to release another webinar or two, actually. And when
I feel like he's always releasing something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, when that's the case, the idea is, again, like I was saying before, it's my job to get really clear and prepared on what the details are of that JV opportunity. And like I said, I typically will put it on an Evernote document, and I put as much ammo on that document as I can to limit the questions. If I put it in front of someone, they've got everything they need right there. And a lot of times people say, yeah, I'm in, I can do it next week or 2 weeks from now or something. And so when that happens, I get it on the calendar. I make introductions. I'm just kind of going through, I'm not going through everything I do, but the basics are, get it on the calendar, get them to agree to that 15-minute brainstorm call.
Yep.
So that's on the calendar. Once that's on the calendar, I let them know, give me a few days. We'll work up a document that we will present to you that gives you everything you need. And we'll have some questions for you regarding.
And if Caleb gives you swipe, you better study that swipe like it's your job, because one of the best copywriters.
Yeah, that absolutely. Yeah, he's just the email copy alone that he uses in his promotions are crazy.
It's a masterclass.
Yeah, and he doesn't personally write all of that stuff anymore, but he's trained these copywriters, and he's written his own copy for years. Now, some of his copy he still writes, but the ones that he has outsourced or whatever are outsourced to people he's personally trained and know his style.
Yep. So what happened on the other side? I don't know if you want to talk about the one Caleb launch or webinar that was successful. What happened?
Well, I mean, I'll just bring up the initial one that he did with a partner, and I probably shouldn't say names because
You don't have to.
yeah. But there's a good friend of mine that I've done a lot of deals with over the years who was the initial partner for Caleb's high profit Facebook groups webinar, which is actually being retired now. Just so you know, it's no longer a thing on the JV circuit right now. Nothing bad, just that it was 2-3 years in the making, and decided to do some other promos. But this partner of ours, a good friend of mine, endorsed it, and just it was really cool because I just reached out to him in a way that I was just like, this is something that I think could be the next big webinar on the circuit. And I've said that before and really meant that with different webinars that I really think are going to blow up, and they usually do, right? And this one definitely didn't disappoint. And I remember this partner did over 200,000 in sales on that first webinar. And here's the magic to that. And the reason I bring that example up is that when that happens, and I tell people this too, that when you get that first webinar done, especially in the internet marketing / make money online space, once you get that out there, more partners are out there watching, that they have registered, or maybe they have just heard about it and they see it being promoted by somebody. And then they start reaching out asking, hey, how did that webinar do? They might reach out to me. They might reach out to you if you have a webinar doing that, whatever. And that's where you can kind of snowball it. So it's not just about, going out and recruit. You still do that. You still go out there and approach these potential partners, but you also have people coming to you, asking about it as well. So,
Andy, there's 2 last questions. You'll let me know if you don't have time for them. One is I wanted for you to share a few things of motivating people to promote. Like you said, even if you have them on the calendar, even if they agree to do it, actually motivating them to continue to promote more. And the second is I wanted to just tell your backstory. You have a really interesting backstory of where you started. Okay. Yeah. And how when you first got into kind of this online marketing world, I think what was your job at the time?
Post office clerk.
Yeah. So what was the transition? So I don't know which one you want to attack first.
I can talk about whatever you want me to talk about, man.
Talk about motivating people to promote first, and then I want you to tell just a brief backstory because I know you have to hop on another call. But talk about motivating people to promote, because there's so many steps up to that point. There's so many steps that happen. Like, okay, we're going to say yes, but now they need to actually start sending and because everyone's busy, even though they have the best of intentions. Andy, they still need that push. People are busy. So,
first of all, this is why I got out of the product launch game. Like, I stopped being an affiliate manager for product launches because I'd come on as a a product launch JV manager or whatever for different launches. And even though it was enjoyable to a certain extent because of the people I was working with, the hours and the time spent chasing people down, getting people committed to promote a product launch, and then having to follow up, making sure they're going to promote, and then keeping them motivated was just exhausting. Now with webinars, it's a little bit different. When you're working with one partner at a time and you've got a week set aside for a specific partner, then it's just about communication at that point. It's obviously getting them what they need in plenty of time. Just being that voice in between, or just watching the conversation that's going on, whether it's in Skype or Facebook Messenger, reaching out, asking if they have everything they need, making sure all the links are working, stuff like that, which you don't have to do yourself. You can have someone else on your team do that, the technical stuff. But then as you're getting closer to the promo, reminding them, what their webinar panelist link is, or the GoToWebinar panelist link is. And then once they start promoting, updating them as soon as possible as sales come in, how those sales looked. Hopefully they've gone really well. And when they have, you let them know right away, hey, great job. You're off to a great start. We still have tonight's encore to go before we even get to the replays tomorrow, as an example, right? Excuse me. And then the next morning, what I like to do is see where we're at sales wise and, update them on the sales numbers, make sure they have their replay link. I know in Caleb's case, the link that was used to promote the actual webinar is the exact same link to use for the replay. So there's no excuse to be waiting on a replay link to be created for you. And so I will just remind them, hey, you have 23 sales so far, off to a great start. By the way, as a reminder, it's the same link you used. Here it is again. Go ahead and send that out. Let us know if you have any questions. Here's your swipes again, or I usually don't send them the swipes again because they're all in one document. I just remind them, to just pull from the swipes and to edit them in their voice and so on. And so I'll do that on a daily basis to update them on sales, how that's going, just asking everything's okay, reminding them of certain things like a payment plan is starting on Saturday or Sunday morning. The deal's closing Sunday night. So be sure on Sunday, really, check out those emails, or quite a few emails to send on that day. Things like that, just staying in communication.
Sounds like communication and reinforcement are the two keys to just continuing to make sure people are doing what they need to be doing, even though they're super busy. Andy, talk about where you started. Like you said, the post office clerk, and how you got into this.
Yeah, well, and it's not that I like talking about myself, because I do not like talking about myself. I do love telling this story because I think it can inspire some people who maybe are struggling or whatever. So for me, what I was doing, like I was working as a post office clerk. I was a college dropout, got out of school to help raise a little boy who I ended up adopting when he was 5. And anyway, so the short version is that fast forward, I was working.
Is that why, Andy, you dropped out at the time? Or was that just happened later?
Yeah, I dropped out because of the fact I was staying home a lot to help take care of him, and my GPA was dropping. So I had a full ride ROTC scholarship that would have paid for all my bachelor's and graduate school. And because my GPA was dropping, I decided to go ahead and drop out of school that semester, intending to go back that next semester. And I never did. So, but that's cool. I
just don't want to breeze over. Think of at the time, someone's in college helping take care of a child, ends up adopting them. That's not like a normal story, right? Like it doesn't happen to most people. So I'm really curious of maybe sharing a couple bits from that.
It was just tough, man. It was tough because, and I tell you what, I'm good friends with his mom to this day. We never did make it. We had another son together when we were engaged, and she's a great mom and has always been there for the kids. We were better off not being together. We were so young, and but it was tough because I was on a track like this. I thought going through college, I played 1 year baseball, quit because I just knew I wasn't going anywhere with that, and just got that ROTC scholarship by joining the Army, National Guard, and all that. And then when I dropped out, it was a punch in the gut. And then I struggled for a few years before I got that post office job. But during that post office job is when I still just kept listening to audios while I worked, while everyone was making fun of me for it. And because
there wasn't a culture there
yeah, they were listening to like talk radio and of course music. And
what were you listening to at the time?
I was listening to audios about mindset, even real estate investing, say personal development. And I remember it was Ron LeGrand's information marketing boot camp tapes, cassette tapes. And there was an audio in there about internet marketing. And I think it was Ken McCarthy. Yeah. And that led me to attending his first system seminar in 2002, I think it was. And
there were some amazing people there, right? Like wasn't Perry Marshall there? Like who else was
dude,
that?
Listen to this. And it's been a long time, so I'm a little foggy on this, but the way I remember this is that Perry was sitting right next to me. We haven't remained like we we were friendly with each other, but we never did end up staying in touch. And that was one thing I wish we had. But
we'll all go to the Cubs. I'm going to like ping Perry. Like we're all going to go to the Wrigley Field at some point. So
yeah, you should. Yeah. I know he's up there too, but he was sitting right next to me. I believe it was when I think John Keel was on stage, announced that something about Google AdWords was being released. I don't know if that was like April 2000.
No, you're right. Yeah.
2002. And I remember hearing Perry and his and like go, oh man, like having his eyes lit up or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, that is pretty cool. This guy is really excited about it. Like the king of Google AdWords or whatever.
Yep.
And so that's the cool stuff that happens, when you go to these events and stuff, and a lot of memories. So yeah, there were people like Perry, Yannick Silver, John Keel, who a lot of people don't know of, but was a mentor of mine. He actually helped me quit the post office. Anyway, a lot of different people. And so, but to kind of finish the story about where I began, because I was listening to those audios and I was sick of my job, I wanted something better for myself. I decided to call in sick to go to that first system seminar on a weekend.
Where was it?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Got it.
And get this, I lived at the time 40 minutes northeast of Indianapolis, and I was about 30 miles away headed to Cincinnati, and I could only go because I didn't have the money for a plane ticket. If it had been somewhere further away, it was driving distance. And I got about 20 or 30 minutes away, pulled into a parking lot, and because I felt overwhelmed, I thought, man, I'm in over my head. I'm going back home. But a voice hit me, said, dude, you just need to keep on going. And so I did. And then because of that, I eventually just got really sucked into the whole internet marketing game, met John Reese at the next event, and rest is history.
I love that. And hopefully, Andy, someone listens to this and gives them the motivation to keep going. Like if they're a place where, I'm not ready for this. I was talking to Cameron Harold earlier today in his COO Alliance, and he was saying they're in a room full of CEO. To be in his group, the company has to be doing $5 million or more. Most of them are doing $20 million. Okay. The CEO in there said, I feel like a fraud. Yeah. And then at a break, he told Cameron, like, I don't know if this is right for me. I feel like a fraud. Like all these people are impressive. I shouldn't be here. and he said, do you mind if I share that story with people when they went back from lunch? And he goes to the group. He goes, before I tell you the story, who in here feels like a fraud? Every single person raised their hand.
Yeah.
Every single person raised their hand, which is like, no matter where you're at.
Dude, during the call right now, it's like, over the years when I've done these calls, I got to a point where I just kind of say what comes to mind and I just go with it, right? But there's always that thought before someone asks a question. I'm like, man, I hope I know the answer to this. I hope they don't figure out that I don't have all my stuff together all the time, Yeah.
So, which is the truth for everyone. That's my point. So I totally appreciate you sharing that. Wherever someone's at, they're just, that's what people are thinking, right? Mm-hmm. So let's point people towards your site, endorsedinfluence.com. Check it out. Where else should we point people towards online? And first of all, I just thank you. Thank you for agreeing to do this. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Where else should we point people towards?
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. Well, first of all, endorsed.influence.com is my main website. And to be quite honest with you, I've hardly used the site at all the last couple of years. It's there as a placeholder pretty much for anyone who might, stumble upon me, right? Mm-hmm. But you can go to, I've got a Facebook group that I am revamping, and it's called Connecting the .coms.
Got it.
Because that's what I do. Right. And it's connectingthe.coms.com. If you just go to that URL, it'll take you there. And so that's something I'm ramping up. And then the guys, like I said, my partners with Webinarcom, Onyx Singal and Ron Douglas and I are releasing some stuff. So if you ever go to webinarcom.com, there's usually some sort of an opt-in form that lets you get on a waiting list or announcement list for any new events or offers that we might have.
Who should contact you, Andy? If they're listening to this, they're like, I want to work with Andy. Who's like a perfect fit for you?
Sure. Well, if you're doing webinars, you need guidance on the JV side of things. Anyone that's in this space, it's got a course that you're looking to get endorsed by other influencers and so on. You're looking, let's say you've got a list, you're an affiliate or JV partner, you're looking for webinars that you'd like to promote to your audience, or there's that word again, endorse to your audience. People like that, just reach out to me. You can also reach me on Facebook. It's just Andy. It's facebook.com/Andy Hussong. And that's it.
Andy, thank you again. Absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I love having being a part of this. Love that you have me on here, and we got to do that Cubs game if we can ever get back to normalcy, right?
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.